Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, and welcome tonight to our Pulpwood Academy online book club. I'm very excited to be here because we have a special guest, Henry G. Brinton, who is one of our Pulpwood Queen authors for his book, City of Peace, which is a novel. And also joining him is Sherry Staunch, who owns Main Street Reads. She's here too. So we're very excited to have Sherry, who actually brought this book to my attention. But before Henry starts his wonderful presentation tonight, I have to put on my readers. I have to share this because this is some amazing things about Henry. He is a Presbyterian pastor who has written on religion and culture for the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, and Huffington Post. A frequent speaker at workshops and conferences, he is the author and co-author of 5 books, including The Welcoming Congregation, Roots and Fruits of Christian Hospitality, his interfaith work and appreciation for the wisdom of the ancient world began on an archaeological dig in the Galilee region of Israel. I'm really looking forward to hearing about that. But I also know that you just won another award, Henry. Can you share that with our audience tonight?
Yes, thank you, Kathy. I was very pleased that my novel, City of Peace, was the American Fiction Awards winner in the Cozy Mystery category for 2019. So
congratulations.
Very recognition.
That is awesome news. Well, let's hear your story, Henry, because it's quite topical for everything that's going on in the world right now. So I am dying to hear more about it. So let's hear about City of Peace. I'll let you talk.
Thank you, Kathy. It's so great to be here as part of the Pulpwood Academy. And I had such a great time with you at the Girlfriends Weekend last January. Right before the world changed. That was one of our last really good times before everything shut down. So I hope you can crank that up again in years to come. So I'm very happy to be here to talk about City of Peace. This is an important story for me. It's a very personal story. It touches a lot of themes that are very, very close to my heart. And so I do want to begin by talking about the inspirations for this book, what has led me to write this story. First, the town of Akaquan, a very historic town in Northern Virginia. Fairfax Presbyterian, which is the congregation I serve as pastor and have been pastoring for the past 20 years. And third, the city of Sephiroth, a city in the Galilee region of Israel. This story is a murder mystery, and it deals with a man named Harley Camden, who is a Methodist pastor who suffers a terrible loss. He loses his wife and his daughter to a European terrorist attack. Spiraling downward in grief and anger, his bishop has to step in and move him from the large church that he's serving in Sterling, Virginia, down to the town of Akaquan. And the town itself plays a really important part in this story. It's a river town of about 1,000 people, 30 minutes south of Washington, D.C., and the name is an Indian word, which means at the end of the water. You can see from this picture, it's a town nestled right on the banks of this beautiful Akaquan River. Kind of a funny story, though. I presented this book to the residents of Akaquan. I'm now a resident of this town myself. And afterwards, the mayor of the town gave a response to my presentation. And he said that they had recently had some linguists who had been studying the name Akaquan, and they determined that the name actually means a grove of trees.
Oh.
But the mayor said, we've already got our town seal and our stationery and our signs. And so as far as we're concerned, it means at the end of the water. It's not changing.
Oh my.
So a lot of history in this town. It was founded in 1734. And at the time of the Civil War, it was an abolitionist stronghold. Now, Virginia, as we all know, was the capital of the Confederacy, and Virginia was about to separate from the Union in 1860. At that time, Akaquan was filled with a number of Quaker residents who were abolitionists, very much opposed to slavery. And so they were really out of step with their fellow townspeople. When Abraham Lincoln ran for president in 1860, the residents of Prince William County, where Akaquan is located, had a chance to vote in that election. And Abraham Lincoln received only 55 votes from the entire county. They all came from Akaquan.
Oh my.
So Akaquan has never been a town afraid of going its own way, doing the right thing, even in very conflicted times. And so I think Akaquan has something to teach us today. Now the town is very racially and culturally diverse. You can see Muslim women in headscarves walking down the street, right along with Latino immigrants, Blacks, whites, people of different backgrounds. The second inspiration for the book is the church I serve, Fairfax Presbyterian Church in the city of Fairfax. This is a church that tries very hard to be a house of prayer for all peoples. You can see that line from the book of the prophet Isaiah is on the wall behind the pulpit in the picture on the screen now. And that's very important to us. We live in a very fractured time. We live in a very polarized time. And people are increasingly going in different directions, politically, religiously, culturally. We believe that God is calling us to be a house of prayer for all peoples. And so we work hard to try to welcome all people with God's love and God's grace. And that is, sadly, a countercultural position to take. That's another inspiration for my book. Finally, the city of Sephiroth. Sephiroth is a city that most people have probably not heard of. It's in the Galilee region of northern Israel. It's a short distance from Nazareth, just 7 miles from where Jesus grew up. But in spite of that, it's never mentioned in the Gospels. And that's kind of a mystery. During the years after the ministry of Jesus, it was occupied by the Romans. It was, of course, a Jewish city, but occupied by the Romans. And when the Jews revolted against Rome in the year 70 AD, Sephiroth chose not to participate in the revolt. Instead, they found a path to peace. And as a result of that, the city was spared. It was not destroyed by the Romans, and it became a city of Jewish scholarship. So the city of Sephiroth has something to teach us as well. There's a secret to the way people learn to live together in Sephiroth that I think can be instructive to us in our very polarized society today. Here in this picture, you see a mosaic of a woman that may very well have been a Jewish woman. It is a piece of art created in the Roman mosaic style. And this particular mosaic, discovered by some Duke archaeologists in the 1980s, has become known as the Mona Lisa of the Galilee.
Wow.
Truly a beautiful piece of art. So let's get into the story a little bit. As I said, Harley Camden, Methodist pastor, is sent to the town of Akaquan to heal and to recover after losing his wife and daughter to terrorists. The church he's sent to, Riverside Methodist, was established as an African-American church after the Civil War. A pastor named Bailey, who had been enslaved, was the founding pastor. He built this church, and it thrived as an African-American church for over 100 years until the congregation actually outgrew the building. And in this slide, you see a picture of the actual church that exists to this day in Akaquan. Now, Riverside Methodist is my invention, but this church did become available when the African-American congregation outgrew it and moved out. And in my story, Harley Camden is sent here to lead a small Methodist flock. Those are your people, right, Kathy? Methodists?
That's right. I'm a Methodist, and I was interested in, as a pastor of the Presbyterian church, and you explained to the audience why you chose Harley to be Methodist.
So Harley Camden is a Methodist in this book because for the purposes of my story, he needed to be sent to Akaquan. He needed a bishop to tell him, go to Akaquan, Harley, work there, heal and recover. In the Presbyterian church, we do not have bishops. No one sends us anywhere. We are called to congregations through a long process of committees meeting and discerning what kind of pastor they want. And quite frankly, that would be totally boring and a murder mystery. So I needed Harley to be sent by his bishop to Akaquan. And fortunately for me, I have a lot of close colleagues who are Methodists. I understand the theology, the worship, and so it was not hard for me to put myself into the head of a Methodist pastor. So it's an interesting little church. In my story, it has a stained glass window with a black Jesus. Wow. And let me give a very brief reading to kind of set the stage for this story. Riverside Methodist Church in Akaquan had a black Jesus. Harley noticed it the first time he walked into the small sanctuary and looked up at the stained glass window at the front of the church. At first, he thought that the glass was simply dirty. But as he moved closer, he realized Jesus was designed to look more like a Palestinian Jew than an English Methodist. That's probably historically accurate, he thought, and politically correct. But then he looked closer and saw the date on the lower right-hand corner of the window, 1885. The dark-skinned Jesus had been installed in an era when most stained glass images of him were decidedly Northern European white. This Jesus had a determined look on his face as he calmed the waters of the Sea of Galilee. Harley quickly realized why. Riverside Methodist had been founded by a pastor named Bailey, a former slave, and for over a century it had been an African-American congregation called Emmanuel Baptist Church. Looking around the old building and imagining the small congregation that would gather there, he realized that the church was going to be a lot of work. And this realization made him feel frustrated that he had been demoted at the very peak of his career. When he opened the door to his office, which was located next to the pulpit, he was shocked and disappointed. The office was hardly bigger than a broom closet, and the desk had a typewriter on it. Yes, a typewriter in 2017. Harley was not the only one suffering. That night, Nora Bayati, the daughter of the local Iraqi baker, was smothered in her bed. So this sets up the murder mystery aspect of the book. The death of this young Iraqi immigrant, Nora Bayati, and the town being thrown into turmoil by this unexpected death. I'll share another image with you, and this is the image of Akaquans Rocks. These rocks really do exist right across the river from the town. They are 300 million years old. Just try to wrap your mind around that history. These rocks have been witness to many divisions in the course of history. And as Harley is on a run one day, he discovers among the graffiti on these rocks is the mark of the Islamic State. This now sets into motion the terrorism thriller aspect of the book. And Harley is drawn out of his own grief and frustration to have to face this threat to his congregation, to his small flock there in the town of Akaquan. He does encounter another person that becomes very important to him, a woman that had been a classmate of his when he himself was a student at Duke University. He had been in seminary there at that Methodist Divinity School, studying to be a pastor. And while there, he had gone on an archaeological dig to Israel, to the town of Sephiroth. And there he had met a woman who was a Duke senior, a religion major, a Jewish woman named Leah Silverman. They became very close as students, and then they reconnected when he was sent by his bishop to Akaquan. And so I want to say a little bit more about her because she plays an important role in this story. But first, I'll just show another slide of another setting important to the book, and that is the Akaquan River and the boating that Harley does on the river. One of his indulgences after moving there is to buy himself a used powerboat. And for him, boating becomes an escape into nature, a place where he can experience the wind and the water, which for him has theological significance. The wind reminds him of the power of the Holy Spirit. The water reminds him of the cleansing power of baptism. But the water also becomes a challenge and a danger. So let me read a short reading that talks about a boat ride that Harley took with his friend Leah Silverman soon after discovering the possible Islamic threat from the graffiti he saw on those rocks. It's the 4th of July, and the two of them are having a picnic on his boat. As Harley is swallowing a piece of cheese, he asks Leah, "Has anyone ever linked the Bayati family to terrorism?" Leah's expression made Harley want to take his question back. "No," she said sharply. "Are you kidding? They have been here for 20 years and are bakers. How does that fit a profile for terrorism?" Harley shrugged. He hated to look stupid. "There is just so much lone wolf stuff going on," he suggested, trying to redeem himself. "Well, not the Bayatis," Leah snapped. "Harley, you have got to understand. We Jews have suffered so much from guilt by association. You know the history. Centuries of being called Christ killers. Hitler blaming us for Germany's loss in the First World War. Anytime I see Muslims being associated with terrorism just because they are Muslim, I have to defend them. Holocausts come out of that kind of suspicion." Harley knew she was right, but he couldn't shake the fear that had grabbed him when he saw the graffiti on the rocks. And he wondered, how can she know for a fact that they are innocent people? "Harley, you remember what our professor taught us about Sephiroth, right? You've got a role to play in making Akaquan just such a place. If we can't figure out how to live and work together like the people of Sephiroth, we've got no hope for the future. Any peace on earth has got to start in places like this." Harley sipped his beer and looked at the deep green leaves of the trees on the shoreline. Where was the sweet companionship that he and Leah had enjoyed just a few nights before? His rage was returning. Leah was really getting under his skin. Peace on earth? Who is she kidding? How can she be so naive? My wife and daughter believed in peace, and look what happened to them. "Harley, you need to be a bridge," she said, "just like that bridge over the river. As a pastor, you have the challenge of making connections, bringing people together. And truly, that does become the challenge that Harley faces as he seeks to help to solve the mystery of who killed Nora Bayati, the daughter of the Iraqi baker, and also what he can do to bring people together to somehow find a way to be spared destruction from a possible Islamic terrorist attack. And so I'll share one other image with you because this brings us to another site in Akaquan that is occupied by a family that Harley gets close to that have a lot to teach him. This is a jewelry shop and home. The family lives in the apartment above the jewelry shop, and their names are Yusuf and Sophia Ayad. They are Coptic Christians, Christians from Egypt, one of the most ancient families within the Christian community, going right back to the time of the apostles. And they teach him a very important lesson about Christian hospitality. So let me share one other very brief reading about a meal that Harley has with these two and what he learns from them. They're sitting down to eat, and Harley says to Sophia, "This food is delicious. Thank you very much. It all seems very healthy." "Food is important to us," Sophia said. "Think of the many times that Jesus sat down to eat with people, even tax collectors and sinners. Christian hospitality is very important to Yusuf and to me." "I do appreciate it," Harley added. "Think of how much better the world would be if people actually sat down and ate with each other." "No doubt about it," agreed Yusuf. "The Bayatis have become some of our closest friends here in Akaquan, largely because we have shared so many meals. Back in Egypt, Christians and Muslims are getting together less and less, which has caused the animosity and violence to increase. Did you hear about the attack last December in Cairo?" "No, I missed that," admitted Harley. "A suicide bomber attacked St. Mark's Coptic Orthodox Cathedral. More than 24 worshipers were killed, including a 10-year-old girl." "It was horrible," Sophia said, shaking her head. "The worst attack on Copts in years. The Islamic State claimed responsibility." "How did the Copts respond?" asked Harley. "With increased security, of course," said Yusuf, "but also with prayer. Prayer for the victims and for their attackers." Harley was impressed that the Coptic community could respond with prayer for such evildoers. Thinking back over the past year, he hadn't said a single prayer for the terrorists who killed his wife and daughter. And yet he knew that Jesus commanded his followers to pray for the people who persecuted them. So,
That's powerful. Very powerful.
this is an important message close to my heart about the power of people working for peace by developing relationships around tables, practicing hospitality.
That's so true. And sharing the stories amongst one another around the table. Great. I love it.
Yeah, Henry came to an event, a couple of events. He did an event at our bookstore at Main Street Reads out in Somerville, and he did one down at Buxton Books down in Charleston. And in Charleston, he had a great group there. And, it was last year that he was just this past, that he was with us. And of course, that's just not too long after what happened in Charleston with the Mother Emanuel shooting at the church where people were there for Bible study. And it really brought up some seriously heartfelt discussion points and really kind of some pride in Charleston too, because they did that more so than you've seen a lot of these things happen. They stood up afterwards and they said, we're not going to let this beat us. Let's let this bring us together instead of tear us apart. And let's forgive those people. And it's not easy. It's not easy to do, but the difference in that, and just the difference in the whole community, how it brought the community together after this, was very, very powerful.
That's so
Thank you, Mary. I enjoyed that visit so much. And the name I created for the church in Akaquan, the name of the African American church before it became Riverside Methodist, was Emmanuel Baptist Church. And that was my homage to the good people of Mother Emmanuel in Charleston, a name which many of you know means God is with us. And that was certainly true for the congregation there.
I'm loving the story behind the stories, because it just gives so much more depth and understanding to just the whole thing that you're reading, you know. Thank you.
Well, I am open to questions about the town of Akaquan, about Fairfax Presbyterian, the city of Sephiroth, Riverside Methodist, Harley Camden, or myself, Henry Brinton. So happy to be in conversation with any of you.
Well,
Henry?
I know. Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what are you working on now?
Yeah.
I have completed a draft of a sequel to City of Peace.
Oh, yay!
It is called Windows of the Heavens. Some of the same characters will return, including Pastor Harley Camden. In this story, it is also a murder mystery, but in this story, the threat to the town and its people is not a terrorist threat. It is an environmental threat. And we residents of riverfront communities are very sensitive to the fact that we are living on the edge of destruction at any time, and that destruction is only becoming more likely because of what is going on with climate change.
That's right.
When is that expected to release?
Well, Kohler Books is my publisher for City of Peace. I've been very happy with them as a publisher. I think they'd like to see me sell a few more copies of City of Peace before they take a chance on the new book, Windows of the Heavens. So the Pulpwood community can help me with that.
Okay.
We will certainly put the word out for you, Henry.
Absolutely.
And you know, as someone who has used fiction books for my youth group and for suggesting for my Sunday school classes, have you ever thought about having a Bible study where they read your book and you create a Bible study handbook to go along with your book, which I think would be wonderful. I know Shelley Rushing Tomlinson has done it with her book, and there's been several from my Pulpwood Queen author, Ron Hall, who wrote his book with Denver Moore, same kind of different as me. They did a Bible study book. So is that something that you've ever thought about?
That is a great idea. I confess I have not thought about that, but thank you. I think it would be a very natural companion to this book. And I've used stories from the book in my preaching, and so it connects with many important scripture passages that would not be hard to tease out with a Bible study companion. So thank you, Kathy.
And even opening it up to not even just members of your church, opening up to the community, like the One Book, One City programs, having a Bible study that is open up to all religions. We did this with our Methodist church back in Jefferson, and we had people from the Baptist church, the Catholic church, all joining our Bible studies. And one of the funnest Bible studies we ever did was we would meet and watch the Andy Griffith Show.
Oh, yeah.
And they did a Bible study that went along with the lessons that Andy and, Barney Five taught us. And it was the most popular Bible study we've ever had, because we watch the show and then we discuss the lessons that we learned from Aunt B. But think about that, because I would certainly love to share that with all my minister friends, because I think they jump on it in a heartbeat.
That would be
So
great.
tell your publisher that.
Yes, yes. Well, and I like what you said about this being a good book for interfaith discussions as well.
Absolutely.
One of the first communities I presented the book to was the Turkish Muslim community in Fairfax. And this is a group that our church has worked with extensively, working together to feed the hungry, to house the homeless. There is nothing that separates us when it comes to meeting human need. And so I've gotten very close to members of this community, their imam and lay leaders. And so I took City of Peace to them and presented it to them. And I was a little nervous because there are some important Muslim characters in the book. The Bayati family is sketched out in some detail. And I wanted very much for the Muslims in the book to be fully fleshed out human beings, not cardboard characters. And so when I finished my presentation, a number of them had already read the book. And one young woman said that she felt that the Muslim characters in the book were very well done.
Yeah, it's very obvious that you've researched your subject matters, because it was told very in a way that, you know, people could make their own judgment. And quite frankly, the only way we're going to have this, you know, City of Peace per se, is that if we all get in conversation with each other and realize that, yes, we have religious differences, but we have a lot of similarities too. You know,
Indeed.
There's a great line in the book Chocolat by Joanne Harris that talks about, you know, maybe we should define our humanity and our goodness not by who we exclude, but by who we include.
Oh, and good one, Sherry Staunch.
And
that's a good one.
Yeah, and it was just a powerful, powerful line for me, and that's what I got when I was reading Henry's book, and why we've been so happy to recommend it to so many readers, because it does give us that. And of course, I went in a bit prejudiced because I had, you know, I had the honor of being able to work with Henry in advance of his book releasing for publication. And one of the stories that I love that you told me early on, Henry, was of you actually doing that archaeological dig. Could you talk about that a little bit?
That's fascinating.
And the people that you met there and how it got you to this inclusiveness stage?
Absolutely. I regret to say that I was not part of the team that discovered the Mona Lisa of the Galilee.
Oh,
that would have been marvelous.
Yeah, that would be.
I was 5 years too early for that. But I did dig at another site in the Galilee called Ain Nabratain. And that was an experience for me, having grown up in the Presbyterian church and not really living a sheltered life, but somewhat a limited life in terms of understanding different faiths. And on that dig, I was digging right alongside Jews and Muslims. And when you're getting dirty in a hole with someone, you get very close and talk about a lot of things that unite us and some things that we don't agree on as well. And that really gave me a sense of interfaith community that has stayed with me ever since. And so I am always looking to make connections with people across the lines of religion, race, culture, and I'm always enriched by that. That is where the hope for peace is to be found. It's when people develop deep-spirited friendships. There's no reason that we can't hold on to our core convictions. My view of the Christian church, which is really all I can speak of as a practitioner of the Christian faith, is that I think we need to be solid at the center and soft at the edges. And that is to say, at the center of our life together, we believe that God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's That's a Christian conviction. But at the edges of our life together, we can work alongside Jews, Muslims, people of no faith to make our world a better place. You don't have to agree on theology to work together to improve this world that we all share.
I agree with
So
you.
I trace that back to getting dirty in the dig site in the Galilee region. And I will also say, just historically speaking, the Galilee region where Jesus grew up has been a multicultural place for most of its history.
Yes.
In fact, it was in the Bible, it's called Galilee of the Gentiles. So Galilee of the other people. It's always been a multicultural place. And for most of its history, Jews, Christians, and then at a certain point in history, Muslims found a way to live together there. And there's some hope for us in that.
I love the word hope, but you know, when I started the Pulpwood Queens book club, you know, I came from a small place in Kansas, you know, and I had that experience of growing up in the church, but it wasn't until I got out into the world and started meeting people from, you know, other races, cultures, and religions. But I really have to give my parents a lot of credit for this. They always said, you know, don't judge anybody by the way they may look, you know, get to know them. And once I get to know people, I find it fascinating, other cultures and peoples. And that's why this coming year, during this COVID virus, I'm not only going to have 12 books of the year, I'm going to have 12 international books of the year, because we're an international book club. It's time for everybody to get on the same page and understand that it's a conversation. It's a story that needs to be told like yours, Henry. It's very powerful, and it's done in such a wonderful way that I am really looking forward to your next book. I can hardly wait. And I really hope you do that Bible study, because it'd be something I would highly recommend. And Sherry, thank you for your wonderful insight. But one of the things I want to tell everybody, and that here's this, is that if you have any questions, and so many of my book club members tell me they're really introverts and don't really want to be very public about their questions, you can go to Henry G. Brinton on Facebook and message him if you have a question, or if you still feel uncomfortable, send it to me and I'll get it to Henry to answer. And to also go to www.bookshop.org/shop the Pulpwood Queens Book Club for all of our listings for our books. The wonderful thing about having Sherry Staunch too on our meeting tonight is that she owns a fabulous bookstore, Main Street Reads in Somerville, which is near Charleston. And I will tell you, she has Pulpwood Queen Book Club meetings, she stocks our books, and she will give you a discount if you order from her Main Street Reads on Facebook and mainstreetreads.com. I also will say, because Sherry's on tonight, that we're getting ready December 9th to do a wonderful interview with the Mighty Blaze with Main Street Reads and me, the Pulpwood Queen. I'm very excited about that. You'll be hearing more. And you'll be hearing more from Henry, because I'm scheduling him to be in December, when he's our bonus book club selection, to be on our Breathless Bubbles and Books daily post, where he'll be our week's host. So Henry, I'm going to let you close this with any last words that you would like to share with the audience, because this immediately after it downloads is going to go on my Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel. I put the link up so you can subscribe and you can share it or have watch parties with your book club. Henry, am I correct in stating that you would be happy to do a Zoom or FaceTime meeting with any of the Pulpwood Queens book clubs, or even other book clubs that are out there? Is that something you would be available to do?
Absolutely. I would love that. This pandemic has been so limiting for so many of us, but there have been some silver linings, and having Zoom book club discussions has been fantastic. I think that the conversations I've had with readers over Zoom have been as good or better than the face-to-face book club visits that I had in the past. So yes, wherever you are, go to my website, which Sherry designed so beautifully before my book launch. Thank you, Sherry. My email is on there, or as Kathy said, you can message me through Facebook. I would love to connect with Pulpwood groups or other groups at any time. We're living in such a strange time, as we all know, and it seems like we're creating opportunities to connect through these digital platforms in ways that we never even thought of before, and I'm really enjoying that. So,
well, and I also wanted to say that The City of Peace, which is a beautiful book, the reason why I had a direct purpose for picking it as a bonus book club selection in December, because it is the perfect holiday gift for anybody on your Christmas or other holiday gift giving, and hopefully you'll continue to give it throughout the year. It's a wonderful book, and I just can't thank you enough, Henry, for being with us tonight. I know it's later there in where you're calling in from, and you're working on the next book. We're looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll see everybody back at 2022 Girlfriend Weekend when we resume our annual book club convention. And I'm just going to let you say the final words and tell everybody bye, and then I'll end this meeting, Henry. So last words from you.
Well, again, thank you, Kathy, and I just send my best wishes to readers across the country and around the world. We live in challenging times, not only with the pandemic, but with things going on in society. And so I would encourage everybody to reach out to their neighbors, to share a meal, share a cup of coffee, make a connection, because that is where the hope for peace exists. As Harley Camden said, the world truly would be a better place if people actually sat down and ate with each other.
Amen.
Peace be with you all.
Thank you, Henry. Bye-bye, and I'll talk to you soon, okay? Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you. Have a great evening, everybody.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.